That time again, seminary. So, yesterday we talked about Helaman 1 and 2. Today we're going to talk about Helaman 3 and 4. So, we're going to talk about kind of the peace and the wars. I feel like all we've done is talk about war for weeks now. And it made me think about kind of what we're going through now and how rough and a terrible time this was and how awful this had to be for all of these people. And I got to thinking that it's so much like what we've been going through. It just feels like things are harder now. I know that life is harder for you guys at your age than when I was your age. It's hard at my age. There's just so many bitterness and contention. Social media, it's all polarizing about who you're voting for or your take on a certain topic. Even like schools right now because of COVID, whether kids should be back in school or not in school, and all these really polarizing topics. And it doesn't feel like you can even say anything without somebody getting upset. And I feel like this is what these people were going through. Just this constant roller coaster of up and downs and good and bad and good and bad. And unfortunately, there was a lot of bad. There is some good, but there's a lot of bad. But it's how these people handle it and how the saints handle it that really changes them and shows us how we maybe need to do it. And maybe we learn from their successes, but we also learn from their failures and learn what not to do and how not to get caught up in pride and how not to get caught up in these things. So keep that in mind as we're going forth. So we're going to start, as I said, in chapter 3. And it says, we're starting, and it came to pass in the 43rd year. So year 43 of the reign of the judges. And the only reason I mention that is we cover a lot of years in this chapter, just chapter 3. Okay? And so it says there was peace with just a little bit of contention. And so it says there was more peace, maybe a little bit of contention, more peace, more peace. And then it says in the 46th year, so it went from year 43 to 46, there was much contention and many dissensions, in the which there were an exceedingly great many who departed out of the land of Zarahemla and went forth unto the land northward to inherit the land. Okay, so it says they traveled and they left. There was so much contention that the people just left and went out on their own. And it says that the ones that left were the dissenters, the ones who didn't like the way things were going, so they left. And it says they went in, and it talks about in verse 5, whatever parts it had not been rendered desolate and without timber because of the many inhabitants who had before inherited the land. Now no part of the land was desolate save it were for timber, but because of the greatness of the destruction of the people who had before inhabited the land, it was called desolate. So that's what they called this land, because the people had become so wicked and had gotten wiped off the earth that they had called this land a desolate land. And they weren't saying desolate in a physical sense, but desolate in a spiritual sense. So I want you to remember that and think about that. So we're going to keep going here, and verse 14. So in verse 14 it says, but behold, 100th part of the proceedings of this people, yea, the account of the Lamanites and of the Nephites, and their wars and contentions and dissensions, and their preaching and their prophecies, and their shipping and their building of ships, and their building of temples and of synagogues, and their sanctuaries, and their righteousness and their wickedness, and their murders and their robbings, and their plunderings, and all manner of abominations and whoredoms cannot be contained in this work. So, he's telling us a story here. This is still Helaman keeping these records, and it's Helaman, the son of Helaman. Okay, so I marked verse 4. This is how I kind of do it. I put these little corner things here. I don't know if you can see them. There's my little corner things. And then, so I put them on the top there, and then I go all the way over here and I put a little bottom thing. And then on the side, I put a note here about why I have that. And so you have these verses, and then it's like 1 through 3 is these verses, and then verses 4 through 17, it's the side note. He's like, so that it traveled away, and then he kind of goes off on a little bit of a tangent, and he tells you that he's doing that. And so like I said, I put those little brackets, and I put a side note / things to come. Okay, because he even talks in 16, and he says, they were scattered upon the face of the earth and mixed with the Lamanites until they are no more called the Nephites, becoming wicked and wild and ferocious, yea, even becoming Lamanites. And then he says in 17, and now I return again to mine account. And he says, therefore what I have spoken had passed after there had been great contentions and disturbances and wars and dissensions. So he kind of goes off on this tangent, and he's like, but this is after a lot of stuff had happened. So that's why I wanted to put that the side note is here, because sometimes it can get really confusing. Okay, and so yesterday we talked about Pahoran dying and all the contention that goes along with that. Okay, and who fills the judgment seat. And so today we find out, says in verse 19, it came to pass there was still great contention in the land, yea, even in the 47th year, and also in the 48th year. Nevertheless, Helaman did fill the judgment seat with justice and equity. He did observe to keep the statutes and judgments and the commandments of God, and he did do that which was right in the sight of God continually. Okay, so all this world and bad is swirling around him, and he is still maintaining his values and maintaining exactly what he's supposed to. And so it's possible, guys. We can do these things, okay? And it says that he had 2 sons, and the oldest is named Nephi, and the youngest is named Lehi. It's really hard when they keep naming everybody the same names, but stick with me here. Helaman, 2 sons, Nephi, Lehi. Okay? So, and it came to pass, this is in verse 22, that the wars and contentions began to cease. And it says there is continual peace established in the land. And so we're in the 49th year now. Remember, we started up here in the 43rd year. So year 43, now we're into year 49. So 6 years and all this has happened, okay? So it says there was continual peace in the land. This is 23. All save it were the secret combinations which Gadiant and the robber had established in the more settled parts of the land. The Dan Gadiant Secret Society. We started it yesterday. It's going to play a big part as we keep going forth, okay? So they're just a treacherous little evil seed that gets in there. Okay, verse 24. Highlight this. There were thousands who did join themselves unto the church and were baptized unto repentance. Even the high priests and teachers were themselves astonished beyond measure. And verse 26, baptizing and uniting to the church of God many souls, yea, even tens of thousands. So even with these highs and lows, the church is growing, and it's growing by tens of thousands. So this is what we're seeing today. Okay, I wanted to put a quote in here. I'm not tech savvy enough to put it up in our video, but it's a quote that says, the same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. So you put a potato in boiling water and it becomes soft, and you put an egg in boiling water and it becomes hard. So take that how you will. You can either become hard-hearted in rough contentions, or you can continue to be soft and just let the Lord work on you even when you have pressures around you. Okay? So, and I have another brackets here, and it's from 27 through 30. Okay? And this is Helaman's lesson test. He likes to write and then be like, little side note. So I think of this as like a TV show where they're acting on the TV and then they turn to the camera and talk to you, and then it goes back to like the show. It's kind of like they just do this little blurb, kind of come out of character and talk directly to the viewer. And I feel like this is kind of what Helaman does. Okay? And so mark that and read that. All right? And it says, now we're in the 51st year. It says, save it were the pride which began to enter into the church. not into the church of God, but into the hearts of the people who profess to belong to the church of God. So they have all this peace, but pride keeps coming in. If you notice when they talk about it, it's like just a little bit because of pride. Okay, we get it handled. Just a little bit of contention because of pride. Pride is a huge downfall. And there's a difference between being proud of yourself, and it's okay to be proud of yourself, but not so much that you forget how come you're able to do so many things. There's a fine line there. Okay, in chapter 4, we're going to talk about more contention. Before we get to there, let's do the very end of chapter 3 and 37. It says, Helaman died, and his eldest son Nephi began to reign in his stead. And it says that it came to pass that he did fill the judgment seat with justice and equity. Yea, he did keep the commandments of God and did walk in the ways of his father. Okay, so Helaman, equity, good guy, he dies. Now his son, oldest son Nephi, is going to take over the seat, and it says the same thing. He's keeping, walking in the commandments of God, his judgment seat. All the bad things are happening around him. He's still keeping his virtue and keeping his commandments. Okay, so in chapter 4, it's like all heck breaks loose. And it says, many dissensions in the church, and there was also a contention among the people, insomuch that there was much bloodshed. So the people in the church don't just get a little bit prideful. They get so prideful that they literally start fighting each other, and there's bloodshed. There's killing because of the contention in the church. Okay, and it says that there were dissenters. This is verse 4. There were dissenters who went up from the Nephites unto the Lamanites, and they succeeded in with those others in stirring them up to anger against the Nephites. So a group of the Nephites left after this. They go to the Lamanites. They try to stir them up in anger. It didn't work. More people keep coming. More people keep coming. And it says in the 56th year, remember we were in year 43, now we're in year 56. So time goes really fast in these couple chapters here. That they stir up the Lamanites to anger. If these people would just get along, it would be so much easier. Okay? And it says that they started preparing for war. And in the 57th year, this is verse 5, they did commence the work of death. So the Lamanites come in with those former Nephites and commence the work of death. In verse 8, and those dissenters of the Nephites, with the help of a numerous army of the Lamanites, had obtained possession of the obtained all the possessions of the Nephites. So they come in and they start driving the Nephites out, and they start obtaining the lands. It's just land, people. Let them have it. Find other land. Okay, and so and it says all this was done in the 58th and 9th years of the reign of the judges. So now we're in year 59. And they came to pass in the 60th year. Moroni-ha, you remember who Moroni-ha was? He is the son of Captain Moroni, okay? Did succeed with his armies in obtaining many parts of the land. Yea, they regained many cities which had fallen into the hands of the Lamanites. 61st year of the reign of judges, they succeeded in regaining even half of all their possessions. Okay, and I highlighted a verse here, and I highlighted it in big, bold, orange. Normally I underline things. Okay, guys, I like to just underline things, but there are things that when I want them to really stand out, I shade the whole area so that I can remember. That's an important one. I highlighted it big and bold so it stands out from other verses. And I'm going to start in verse 11, and it says, now this great loss of the Nephites and the great slaughter which was among them would not have happened had it not been for their wickedness and their abomination. Okay, verse 12 is all of their wrongdoings. Okay, I'm not going to read it all because it's just a list of bad. Okay, it goes on into the next page. Verse 12 is a big verse, and it's all the things they did wrong that they messed up with. And in verse 13, underline this phrase. It says, and their boasting, and because of their great wickedness and their boastings in their own strength, they were left in their own strength. Okay, without the Lord to protect us and help us, we are on our own. Whether it's in wars and battles like this or in spiritual wars and battles, which is what we have to fight every day, We don't live in a war-torn country, thankfully. And so we aren't feared for our life every day, but our spiritual life is always up, in the air, and always, it seems like we're always in a fight surrounded by evil. Okay, and it says in verse 20, and it came to pass because of the greatness of the number of the Lamanites, the Nephites were in great fear, lest they should be overpowered and trodden down and slain and destroyed. Okay, I above that wrote being surrounded by evil. This is what we are, guys. We are a minority here. A lot of you guys are the only members in your school, maybe the only members in your class, the only members in your whole town, some of you. Okay, we're constantly surrounded by evil, and it feels like sometimes we are always under attack and we have to always be so careful. Okay? You guys can stand up and always remember to do what's right. Okay? You guys have the ability. And it's by doing those little things that we talk about all the time, your prayers, coming to church. Reach out to other people in our ward if you guys need help. If you feel like you're falling, if you feel like you're just struggling, reach out to your parents, your siblings, to somebody that can help you, a trusted person, that, because there's so many people here, guys, that just want to see you guys succeed. And I just want to end here in verse 26. It says, thus had they become weak because of their transgression in the space of not many years. The little things weaken us, okay? It doesn't take long for little things to become a big thing. Take care of them while they're little things, right? All right, I love you guys. You're awesome. We can do this. Remember, we have 5 videos this week. We're not going to have a Zoom call on Sunday. I love you guys. Bye.